Well, next up, we have a very special interview. Our hometown, Wilton Manors, is lovingly referred to by Hotspots Magazine and Happening Television Network as the gayest place on planet Earth. After all, this was America's first city to have a gay mayor and all LGBTQ city commission, and then a gay mayor for our major metropolitan city, Fort Lauderdale. Let's talk about LGBTQ politics with Wilton Manors City Commission, Chris Caputo. As a longtime Wilton Manors resident and business owner, Chris has been quoted as saying, quote, "I know firsthand life is just better here, and I'm humbled to serve our community," end quote. Chris is the founder of Development Partners, a local business providing digital marketing services to other small businesses, focusing on data-direct, technology-based marketing strategies. Chris also serves on the Greater Fort Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce as membership chairman and as a member of the executive board since 2020. And lastly, Chris is a board member of the Wilton Manors Business Association, as well as Plays of Wilton, a unique theater collective. We welcome Chris Caputo to Queer News Tonight. Chris, good evening.
It is so great to be here.
I have talked to you many, many times. Of course, you're unique to me as a city commissioner because I see you everywhere, including Wilton Drive. Are you working the streets, by the way?
I mean, it might as well be at this point.
Exactly, and the bars and everything else. You were elected. You're serving your first term. That's right. Tell us why you decided to do that. Why did you decide you're going to run for office?
You know, the city, as I've told people many times, the city took care of me, you know, when I was having a difficult time in my life, you know, when I found out I had HIV, you know, and I was just coming out of a bad relationship, and the Pride Center was there, and people in the community were there, and I felt at home and safe, and it really actually created an opportunity for me to put down roots and really find myself, right? And so in living in the city and loving it and needing to protect this for other people, I just saw things not being as great as they could be. And so I really said, like, this is a time to do what I can to ensure it's there for the next generation.
I have COVID fog in my head. You've been in office now a year.
Yeah.
You decided to run in COVID pandemic. That must have been incredibly difficult.
So it was nothing like what they say a campaign should be like. I'm grateful that being a digital marketer, I had a bit of an advantage perhaps because much of it was done online in Zoom and meetings like that.
So you've done it for a year. Any regrets so far?
I have no regrets, but I can tell you it's much different than what you might think it is to be commissioner.
And what does that mean?
You know, so I think you see this as like, this is going to be fun and we're going to make all these important decisions. And that is true. And
you still have to make the sausage? Is that what you just
I'll tell you, the best part of the job is actually the making of the sausage. You know, it is getting the phone calls from people that, you know, it's like, hey, I don't know what to do with this permit, or, you know, literally, when is bulk trash? And all these things can seem so menial, but it's actually the community that I love, so it's a lot of fun.
It brings me to a question that I'm always fascinated. I haven't had the opportunity to ask you this, but now I get the chance. You're the only politician I think I have ever seen that appears regularly in Facebook groups, and of course that's your digital marketing experience, but you engage people in very unusual ways, and lots of your shares in social media are about your experience. You talk about becoming single, and you talk about Botox. I think I read one of your posts that you engage constituents and people in Grindr. Is that true, by the way? I don't.
Maybe a different type of engagement on that.
Okay. Okay. All right. Got it. Note to self.
Yep.
But it's unusual in the way you're engaging your constituents in Wilton Manors, and many, many more people are listening to you outside of Wilton Manors. What's the motivation to be so out there? I mean, politicians generally don't represent themselves the way you do.
So, you know, the thing that I've never really understood is you know, why as a politician, you sort of have this love of community, right? You love the city that you're in. I love people. I love the opportunity to connect and just get to know them and help one another. And so I'm delighted that it's the platform by which to do that, right? You know, and that the whole point of this was exactly so I can do these things, you know, and the best things for me are when someone's having, like, you know, they've got a question, or they're struggling with something, or they just need a resource in the city, to be there and actually be able to help that, or to change someone's mind, you know, who was like, maybe they didn't know we had affordable housing in Wilton Manors, to be able to point to, look at what we have here that we built as a community. that's like what I get up out of bed for. You know, it's really rewarding.
Interesting. And Wilton Manors, of course, is considered such an LGBT embracing place. So many LGBT residents here. You and the entire city commission is LGBT. I've got that right?
No, so we actually, our mayor, Mayor Scott Newton, is straight.
Okay, yeah. And then I was distinguishing the mayor and LGBT. Previously, through Justin, when he was mayor, it was entirely LGBT. I'm curious for people that are listening that go, wait, you said the entire commission plus the mayor, or previously the entire commission and the mayor is LGBT. People will go, you know, the Scooby-Doo moment of, I'm not quite sure I understood that. Tell us what that's like to serve in a commission that is almost completely opposite of most city commissions in America, where you would be the minority, but you're actually the majority. Tell us what that experience is like.
Well, I think one thing it's almost difficult to describe that is, in living in Wilton Manors, you feel like you're not a minority. You know, we are, you know, roughly 50% LGBT. So all the experience I know in my life is not feeling out of normal. I think, if anything, the thing that I'm fascinated with is, though we are mostly LGBT, we are still very different and unique in the things that motivate us and move us. Some of us are more family oriented. Some of us are more nightlife oriented.
We're not all the same thing.
We're not all the same thing, right? And so even though it's like, you know, hey, we are all this type of diversity, it's interesting to see how we all still have these other unique qualities about us.
That's interesting. Anything that having an all LGBT city commission, plus the mayor being straight, Scott being straight, anything that is a weakness or a problem by having that many LGBT?
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the challenges is, you know, we are, let's say that we're 50% LGBT, and of course we have a lot of tourism dollars that are primarily LGBT. But I think there's a challenge when you are almost or all, and then you're spending money on this group demographic that looks like you. It's easy for people to think you're ignoring everybody else or anything that is not that. It's interesting. I think, you know, at times we may be overly cautious about what we do from an LGBT point of view to ensure that those that are not LGBT don't feel like they're being left behind.
That's interesting. Let's put you in the bucket that we've reported on at Queer News tonight. Victory Fund reports that there's approximately 1,000 LGBT elected officials in America. You're one of those. Congratulations, of one of the 1,000. Victory Fund reports that we're at an all-time high for LGBT in school boards, city commissions, all the way up to a cabinet secretary. The negative of that note is that if we were going to follow our population percentages, we need 22,000 of you. We only have 1,000. Even though we're at a historic high, we've got a long, long way to go. What do you think about that observation in terms of population and representation? And what has to happen to change that for us to continue to add more Chris Caputos?
So I think, you know, and some irony I realize in me saying this, but I think politics is historically, or has often been, white men of a certain age, or at least that's the perceived experience out there, right? And I think that's still dominating it. We know we don't have as many women, we don't have the racial diversity, we don't have the gender identity or sexual orientation diversity, right? So that's not there. And so we need to work on that. And unfortunately, that's going to take longer than I think any of us are okay with. But I don't think it's going to be all that long in the lifespan of a world, right? But I think what we have to remember is we are louder and we are more present. And I'm not just speaking for LGBT, but whether, you know, again, whether you're Muslim, whether you're a woman, whether you're trans, you know, when you're out there, when you are that person that is the person that it looks different from, you have a platform by which you can already more easily stand out. And I think, frankly, to give credit, I think that the media often gives those minorities oftentimes equal airtime, right? Because they are the different, if you will.
Trying to provide a leg up.
Trying to provide a leg up. So I think, you know, I don't so much, I mean, we have a long way to go, but I think there's a lot of opportunity that comes with where we're at still today.
And speaking of that, I know a lot of people listening to you, they will go, you're kind of unusual, and not kind of, you are definitely unusual in terms of your path of city commission. Are there differences? I mean, after all, we're coming up on the midterms. It's looking a little grim right now. We hope it'll improve in terms of projections. We have a governor's race that I'm pretty sure I know who you don't want to be reelected, and a Senate race, which I'm pretty sure I know who you don't want to be reelected. But what is different from a local race like yours at City Commission and what happens at the state level and the national level? And is it a natural progression, or are the kinds of people running for local completely different than those at state or national?
So I'm new to this, so I'll answer the best I can with what I know. It does seem to me that many people use local office as a launch pad for something, I don't like to use the word greater, but something that is on a larger scale, if you will. Mm-hmm. That happens to not be for me, because I struggle when I see, in state and federal legislation, the speed at how slow things move and how hard it is to have that really meaningful direct impact as one person. In our community, the vote we make or the phone call we take or the person we help, that's our neighbor. They're going to feel it. They're going to feel it tomorrow, not after there's been gridlock and nobody can vote on something for a long time. That being said, when it came to, for example, Texas and the craziness that's going over there about reproductive rights, that was an example of an issue where I historically, this is not in my backyard, if you will, but that one is one that's a real example of this is in my backyard, because some things it's so easy to see how when you are challenging something, say in the Supreme Court of Texas or whatever that may be, right? It becomes a model by which that then moves to Florida, that then moves to Broward County down to Wilton Manors. And so I do think that I love the localness of it. It's very different than the things we address, but we also have to have an eye that all politics are local, and sometimes these national things can really hurt people we care about on a local level.
Interesting. You are a younger face. You come to community in different ways. Your transparency in terms of being single and moving into single and the many things that you talk about. We'll probably return to Grindr in a little bit. So can you transition that local into county, into state, into national? Do you have those aspirations? What's going to be next for you?
There's no. I mean, I don't have any interest in that. But what I would say is, that doesn't mean that a large impact can't be made. So like one way that I think about it is, if in Wilton Manors, right, where we have some trans population, but generally we don't have as much support for our own trans community as I'd like to see, I look at that and I say, Wilton Manors, we should be the leading edge of taking care of our trans community, right? Or showing trans right and inclusiveness and these sort of things. And we can show how it's done here, where frankly, we should be the easiest place to do this right, coming together in community. And that can become a model by which other places do things. Even I look at, the affordable housing we had at the Pride Center, right? Which was done with
seniors.
The seniors, that's right. Affordable senior housing is many of the people that live there, though it's not targeted, because it's on the Pride Center campus, many LGBT people live there. And that was done not at any ongoing sort of taxpayer expense. It was creative, public, private, fundraising partnership. And I think that there's so much that can be done in Wilton Manors to have an impact on a national stage without leaving the community that means so much to me.
I want to make sure that I heard you clearly. So you shut the door completely on moving outside of our community. You have no aspirations.
I have no aspirations of running for any elected thing outside of our community.
I see. And your term ends next November?
No, so I'm here for 3 more years.
3 more years. Yeah. We got you for 4 years?
Yeah, 4 years.
How did we do that?
I'm sorry, but thank you.
Right. And okay, I hear you loud and clear. And interesting to me, your mention about trans. Last week I did a 4-part interview with Admiral Dr. Rachel Levine, and we talked about the trans community and healthcare and the state laws that are attacking, especially in states like Florida. Last week I also interviewed Tori Cooper, who's the HRC's National Trans Director for the White House, HIV, and a trans woman of color. And I asked her that specific question. Do you see, in terms of the attacks, do you see our community, the L and the G and the B and the Q, defending our T and our acronym in the way that you see fit and you think it should be accomplished? And she didn't pause for like half a second before she goes, never. And basically said our community doesn't stand up for the T. What do you think about that? I understand you're very pro and support of the trans community. What do you think of Tori Cooper's observation?
So yeah, but I think she's right. But what I would say is it's not a never here in our area. And again, this is where Wilton Manors can lead. Is many in our community do stand up for the trans community, but it's still a fraction of what needs to happen. I completely can understand how. We were all so riled up as a community when it was like our right to marry, and we were this one united mass, right? But as we moved across that finish line, and that alleviated some of our deep fears and concerns about things like end of life and our partners and everything that goes in healthcare and everything that goes with that, right? It's easy when you don't have a trans person as your roommate, as your sister, as somebody close to you. It's out of sight, out of mind. So I don't necessarily think that our community is choosing. They're saying we don't want to support you, but we're not integrated in enough ways.
So it's in inactive support.
That's right. Yeah. I think when we really start showing what's happening here, and for me, what got me involved in the community was I sat down with a trans person who became a friend of mine and just started to ask about life experiences, and I was just blown away at you realize how much privilege you have when you hear those stories, and I couldn't understand how they got up and just faced the day, and so it's just like when a gay person, you think differently about gay people. When a trans person, you feel differently about it.
You very well said. You have. I want to finish the interview by returning back to Wilton Manors. It's a very special place, clearly for the LGBTQ community, especially. We have so many visitors that come into South Florida and they visit Wilton Manors, or they think about that they want to visit Wilton Manors before a cruise or after a cruise. We have the two most popular cruise ports in the world for LGBT. What would you tell people on why they should visit Wilton Manors and why they should come and see it and maybe come and live here?
Yeah, so one of the things as a city we need to do better, frankly, is marketing of Wilton Manors. Frankly, it's shows like this that help market Wilton Manors, because we're not doing enough to get the word out. But where the city may not be stepping up, our community does. I love when I see people that are coming down and they'll go and they'll just join a Wilton Manors. There's many Wilton Manors groups on Facebook. They'll join one, they'll say, what's there to do? And man, it is like 300 people that will jump on that and ask questions like, are you looking to play a sport while you're here? Are you going out for cocktails? Who are you? And we will connect you with our community. It is a place like no place else, and so open and welcoming. I think those are probably my favorite posts, is seeing about people either coming to visit or the people that came to visit that said, hey, we think we might want to live here, or then finally when they move. You can see it on a daily basis. It is, what makes it great here is we really are a welcoming community, and there is something for everybody here, wherever you identify in the spectrum.
Well, it's certainly true. We have friends of the show in Palm Springs, in P-Town, in Key West, in West Hollywood, but we always remind them that we are still the gayest place on planet Earth, and that's the way it should be. Chris Caputo, thank you very much. City Commissioner for Wilton Manors. We'll have to, I understand you're going to come to Queer News Tonight and anchor
I'm so
soon.
excited about that.
Yeah, that'll be great. And we'll begin to figure out over the next 3 years how we get Chris Caputo to think about more after your 4-year stint here at Wilton Manors. Thank you for being with us tonight at Queer News Tonight.
Thank you for all you do.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out television network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ